HBO's The Last of Us was always going to divide people, and yeah, Season 2 has already reignited the fire.
You don't get to rush this.
Stick to the second game and you lose everyone who felt betrayed by it. Change it too much and the backlash is just as brutal. But beyond all that, there is a deeper reason this complicated story is almost impossible to adapt. And to figure it out, we have to start where Season 1 and the first game left us.
Swear to me that everything you said about the Fireflies is true.
I swear.
This was the ending of what might be the greatest experience in gaming history. The Last of Us didn't just tell a story in a game, it pulled us into a raw, haunting world. A world where survival stripped people down to something animal-like, something brutal. But through the chaos, it gave us a beautiful duo, a connection between two lost souls, something messy, fragile, real, and somehow every decision, every quiet moment, it all led here to this.
Okay.
But why does this scene matter so much from the perspective of the show having an impossible task to complete? I'm not here to debate every moral choice or argue about whether the game or show got it right. That's not what this is about. What I want to talk about is something you can't really see on the surface, because this scene isn't just how the first story ends. In my opinion, it is the story. It's the core of what The Last of Us was really trying to say, and maybe, just maybe, that's why it should have been left alone. I know it might sound a bit confusing, but give me a few minutes and I think you will understand where I'm coming from. To begin with, I have always felt like Ellie obviously knew Joel was lying here. Yeah, I know, crazy, right? But technically, it isn't really what matters, and here is why. To me, the moment was never about believing him, it was about accepting him. Not because she trusted the words, but because she chose to live with them. She knew there was some sort of lie buried in what he said, and deep down she understood, whether she admitted it or not, that the trust between them had changed. And the tragic brilliance of this scene is that perhaps Ellie didn't even care. Or in other words, after everything, the trauma, the violence, the unbearable loss, maybe part of Ellie didn't want to uncover the full truth. Because if she did, if she really let herself understand what happened at that hospital, then what does that make Joel? And worse, what does that make her? Well, the second game obviously delves into this, but before we get to that, I want to ask this question. Have you ever thought about this iconic situation like this? Ellie's silence might never have been about forgiveness. Maybe it was about survival of a different kind. Not of the body, but of the bond between them. I know, it's not clean, it's not heroic, but that's never been what The Last of Us is about. Instead, it's an honest portrayal of observing these characters not wanting to lose each other, not wanting to lose the last of them, despite what evil might have happened.
You go north. You go to Tommy.
The title of the story is brilliant on so many levels. Sure, there is the obvious meaning, the last survivors of a ruined world, the ones who made it through the unthinkable trauma and chaos. But more than that, it's about what's left inside us, the parts we cling to, the parts we love, and the parts that change, whether we want them to or not. That's why the final scene of Season 1 and the end of the first game is the perfect conclusion, because of it literally exploring The Last of Us, this last piece of humanity left in a broken world.
So what would she decide? Because I think she'd want to do what's right. And you know it.
I don't know about you guys, but I definitely think it's the most impressive part of the story, that the game started in a world we were familiar with, and by the end it twisted that world into something unrecognizable, where Joel's brutal choice made emotional sense and Ellie's quiet acceptance felt real and painful, which is something the first season of the HBO show managed to complete. Not to the same emotional level as the game, for many reasons reasons that other people have already gone into, but still to a respectable level. Which brings us here, and to a question a lot of people thought about when the second game was announced. How do you follow this? How do you continue a story that already feels whole? Well, to move forward you have to create tension and a reason, and you could do that by tearing down what the first game had built. That's at least the choice the creators of Part 2 made, and it's the same problem HBO faces with Season 2, because the moment you truly understand the first game's ending, you realize that it would be near impossible to make it better. And I will show you a few examples of this right now, starting with the obvious one.
Please don't do it, please! Please don't! Please don't!
There are two big reasons why this is so controversial. One very clear explanation and one kind of overlooked. The more talked about reason why this decision was wrong is that you take away one of the two main characters through reversed expectations, changing Joel into another type of a person without really showing us why, killing him so swiftly and without an actual last conversation and resolution between him and Ellie. It's just brutal. However, what's not talked about enough, I think, is what it did to the other half of this duo. That Ellie, like I hinted towards earlier, now lost this last piece of her that made her human, turning her into a monster. In theory, I'm not saying that this wouldn't work, or that it was an unrealistic evolution of her character. Quite the opposite, actually. It made total sense that she lost herself after seeing Joel go out this way. Instead, what I'm asking is, what's the reason for doing it like this? For example, look at it from this perspective. The key is that The Last of Us Part 2 explores the same core themes as the first game, particularly the question, what in humanity is actually worth saving. It challenges us to think about which of our instincts, like love, happiness, anger, or revenge, are inherently good and which are destructive. But while the first game delivered these ideas through a beautiful relationship, The Last of Us Part 2 is more like a twisted nightmare. It drags players/viewers through suffering, forcing them to watch beloved characters brutalized and broken, just to hammer home the message that revenge corrupts and brings out the worst in us. Although not everyone sees it this way. Some fans argue that while the first game showed Joel's love for Ellie, the second game reflects Ellie's love for Joel. Thematically, the two stories actually complement each other, like black and white mirrors of the same message, and I can see that argument and symbolic way of telling the story. Yet, personally, the second edition didn't feel like a companion piece. It felt like a statement. And let me explain what I mean by that. Essentially, it feels more like a response against certain moral choices in the first game. A gut punch so powerful I couldn't even pick up the controller again once the credits rolled. And I know from one perspective that's the whole idea of art, stories, and games, to make us feel something, and The Last of Us Part 2 definitely succeeded with that. But translating this brutal, devastating experience into a TV show people will want to watch and even feel satisfied by is something I'm not quite sure about, and therein lies the impossible dilemma. Because in the end, adapting The Last of Us Part 2 was never about making everyone happy. It was about carrying a story that was already emotionally complete into a world that keeps demanding more from it. And this is something other film projects have had to deal with as well. So click on this video to explore my take on Daredevil Born Again and why it doesn't feel the same as the beloved Netflix version. Thank you for watching and I wish you a great day.